Yo, okay, so this segment, just gonna just gonna share my thoughts, my professional opinion, of course, um, on Elden Ring, just in case anyone's maybe on the fence or whatnot. For context, these FromSoft games, these Soulsborne, Kiro, whatnot games are like my favorites ever. I poured what is probably like thousands of hours at this point across all of their titles, and here we are at their latest release. Um, I'm gonna go into seven. I'm gonna kind of divide this into like 7 points. What I believe are like the seven uh, most important aspects of this game. The first of which is the scale of it. Um, and in short, it's fucking huge. It's a behemoth. It's massive, absolutely massive. It's crazy. When you first start playing, um, when you first load into this game, you don't see how big it is, which I think is a good thing. I think it's actually quite smart how they've done it. It's not really like daunting or anything. For example, when you spawn into Skyrim, you make it out of Helgen, you hit the map key, and then all of a sudden, holy shit, like there's just this vast expanse around you, and it feels a little bit like whoa. This game kind of reveals it to you step by step. I think that's quite smart. Obviously, the biggest point here worth mentioning is the fact that it's open world. This is their first try at open world, and they absolutely nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. I think it was Charlie, most critical, who said, they didn't just like dabble. I believe his words were they dipped the whole sack in, which he so eloquently put. But he's right. He's totally right. I've seen a lot of people call it maybe hybrid here and there. It's not hybrid. They could have very easily played it safe and gone for like a hybrid open world kind of thing. They didn't. It's very very open world. It's crazy. What's even crazier than that is they're known for in their previous games having really really well done vertical level design, like really intricate level design vertically, especially in Dark Souls 1 and in Bloodborne, right? And they've somehow managed to find a way to implement it into this open world. It's crazy. It's insane. I mean, the landscape is immense, and it's changing constantly. And then you have so many underground areas that just blow your mind because they're also massive and also very different, like a completely different feel. It's it's bonkers. It's honestly bonkers. It's a very layered environment. There's a hell of a lot to it. There's a lot of mobility kind of around it. Well, maybe mobility is the wrong word, but you have like jump pads and lifts and whatnot. So there's a lot that you can use to kind of traverse it to make things a lot smoother for you. Another thing worth mentioning is, so in their previous games, it's kind of like a running theme that the checkpoints are kind of brutal. To make it to the next checkpoint, you usually have to, proceed through a very tough encounter in order to like open a shortcut or something, and it could be very grueling, very testing. And that was honestly maybe my biggest worry actually coming into this game was that, they were going to have this super immense world, and then the checkpoints were going to be really really hard to sort of nail down. But no, they're not. They have, so instead of bonfires in like the Dark Souls games, they have sites of lost grace here, basically a bonfire. They have a shit ton of them. Like honestly, I would say the perfect amount. Every time you get to like a sort of new section of that area, you'll get a checkpoint. And then additionally, they have these little things called stakes of Americas. So even if you already have a bonfire and you're proceeding through a particular area, and there's a tough encounter up ahead, a mini boss, a main boss, even just a really tough mob, you will most likely have a little stake of America. It's like this little broken statue, and what it means is that when you inevitably die, instead of respawning back at the site of Lost Grace, you just simply respawn just straight outside of the encounter, which is amazing. Amazing, really, really cool, really, really smart. Such a simple little mechanic there, but very, very smartly done. So summary for the scale of the game is crazy, crazy huge, and super rich in its size. It's not one of those games that just feels like empty. There's stuff going on everywhere. It's not quite. For example, for comparison, my favorite open world experience still is Red Dead 2. This is a very different game, though. I don't feel right comparing the two. Red Dead 2 is very realistic. This is obviously very fantasy. I don't feel right comparing the two. This is probably the most exciting open world experience since Red Dead 2 for me. All of the other open world games that I've seen over the past, over the past few years, really, have just been almost like carbon copies of each other and not particularly exciting. So it's very refreshing to have one that is. Anyway, moving on to the next point. Maybe the juiciest point that we have is the mechanics. So I would say there's like maybe two perspectives that you could look at the mechanics from. You could either look at it from the point of view of someone who's never played these games before, in which case the mechanics are impressive but not quite as impressive as the other perspective is people like me who have played the shit out of these games. And if you have, then you have like another level of appreciation, I think, for what they've introduced in Elden Ring. So for example, one of the big ones is you now have a mount, you have torrent. It brings like a whole new layer. You have horseback combat, which personally I'm actually not a fan of. However, it's not a deal breaker at all. Actually, it's kind of nice because the way that they've done horseback combat in this game is you're never restricted to it. It's completely optional. It's there if you want it, and it's also kind of up to you to make it what you want it to be. For example, getting on and off of your horse is very seamless and very quick. It's like super smooth. Unlike, for example, something like Ghost of Tsushima can be a little bit clunky with that. This is this is not. You can be fighting, a super, like a super fast, super large enemy, and you can just use the horse to close the distance as just as like a gap closer, and then you can instantly jump off and basically instantly attack, which is super nice to have. The horseback combat for some people probably is quite cool. Personally, not for me. What I like better is the fact that because the world is so immense, horseback travel really good, and that kind of leads me into my next point. This one will seem maybe negligible to people who haven't played these games, but you have infinite stamina outside of combat. Holy shit. The madmen did it. They did it, the crazy bastards. They fucking did it. It's so good. It's so good. And you might be wondering why the fuck I'm like freaking out about something that seems kind of small, but it's super sick. It's super sick that you have infinite stamina outside of combat. It makes everything so much smoother. Just going from place to place. Such a simple change, such a welcome one. So next up in mechanics we have Ashes of War. Essentially what they did with this is from Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 had weapon arts. They've imported that into this game, but it's not really an import. It's weapon arts on crack. Ashes of War are I guess special skills, special abilities that you can find throughout your journey, and you can apply them to either specific weapons or just any weapon, and they can be completely game changing. It adds a whole new delicious layer of flavor to your combat. It's so good. I used to think that, well, when I first started this game, I guess I should have said for context, I'm like maybe like 75 hours in. I've beaten the game. I'm now on my second playthrough where I'm trying to like get everything. But when I first started playing, like my first 15 to 20 hours or so, I thought that they were kind of useless for low level because of what they did for your scaling. They're not. There are a few items that you need to get alongside the Ashes of War to make them worthwhile. They are really strong, really good. I'm so glad that they're strong. They're strong for PvE and for PvP. Super useful, super cool. They seem mostly balanced. There were a couple that were a bit crazy, They've already tuned down one of them. I'm expecting a couple of the other ones to get tuned down. But for the most part, there are a few that are, kind of a bit generic and weak. Then there are some that are like just really solid, and then a lot of really really good ones. Spirit Ashes are, well, I mean they're completely new. I think I can't remember them really doing something like this before. They're basically summons that you can take into particular encounters, usually boss fights, but also sometimes mobs, like tough mobs. You can take in your Spirit Ash summon. It usually costs FP. Some of them cost health. They are really, really good. Really, really good. There's a huge variety of them, like a crazy amount of them. So many different ones that you can kind of find whichever one fits your playstyle, fits your build the most. The one that I'm using is broken as hell. It already got nerfed, but it's still damn broken with what I'm using it with. So they are very strong, and in some cases, I won't lie, they are kind of game changing. For certain boss fights, I'm not gonna spoil anything, but for some boss fights, they can really really make a difference. It's kind of crazy. We also have a simple one, which is you can now jump. It's like I guess you could technically jump in the other games, but this is proper jumping, and it's a very very welcome change. Again, it's just this consistent theme where they haven't just dabbled in something. It's not just like the jumping is an afterthought. It's you are intended to do it, and it feels damn good. Like the animation is super satisfying. They really nailed it. They honestly just knocked it out of the park with that. The combat is what you would expect. It's basically Dark Souls 3. I have no problem with that at all. Why reinvent the wheel? Why try and fix something if it's not broken? Instead of maybe some other studios, I guess sometimes they kind of overdo it. They kind of overcomplicate it. What they've done here is they've kept the combat very consistent with what you would expect, and then they've just added in other mechanics like the Ashes of War that add layers to it, so that you always have this consistent, well-rounded combat that you can always rely on, and then there's a ton of customizability to it, stuff that you can add, which is really smart in my opinion. Definitely a really clever way of doing it. I think that's kind of it for the mechanics that I'll talk about for this. We'll move on to the next point, which is the difficulty, maybe the most controversial aspect that I'll talk about for some weird reason. Don't know why it's so controversial. This game is damn hard. I mean, the games are always hard. However, I would say that this is probably the I don't know if I'm completely right with this statement. I'd say this is maybe their most malleable game, and what I mean by that is the game is kind of as hard as you make it. Like myself, on my first playthrough, I sort of just rushed to the first main boss and hit a bit of a wall, which I had no problem with because it's one of my favorite bosses of all time. Like I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thoroughly enjoyed just, not doing so much damage, just going attempt after attempt, learning the moveset perfectly, by the end, I knew everything down to like a T. I find that really fun. Some people prefer not to go through such a challenge, which is fine. Each to their own. Games are kind of subjective. Obviously, you can try and make your own, and you can do that in this game. From the starting area, there's so much to explore. You can run past so much, collect so much loot, become so much stronger before you have to face something challenging, and it will make it a hell of a lot easier. Also, the kind of class that you pick as well. There's things like sorcery, which sort of let you stay out of the heat of the battle. You just spam things down. Not my playstyle, but it's there. I don't understand some of these opinions that I'm seeing online, where people are calling the difficulty artificial, which is very odd. And then they're in the same breath calling for a difficulty slider, which is the most artificial difficulty I've ever seen in my life, when a game just has easy, hard, medium. Like, is that not the definition of artificial? Just enemy has more health? No. I love the difficulty in this game. It's good. It's really, really good. It is absolutely what you make it. And then the next aspect I'll touch on is multiplayer. I'm not really gonna say much about it because I think it would require like a separate video. I haven't experienced too much of it either. From what I've seen, the PvP is okay. It's not. It doesn't give me the same thrill yet as Dark Souls 2 did. Dark Souls 2 PvP, for those of you who don't know, was legendary. It was so good. I spent so many hours on that. I'm not sure if they'll ever make PvP as good as they did in that game. Um, but yeah, that's kind of yet to be discovered for me. After I'm okay, my game decided to tab me out. After I am my stream was buffering for a second there. Yeah, as I was saying, after I'm done with my like 100% playthrough and stuff, maybe I'll start to touch on the PvP side of things, and I'll maybe make something at that point. Next aspect is the story. So the lore is pretty consistent with their previous stuff. It seems really really good. I'm not a huge lore guy myself. I usually just wait for the Vati videos and just watch them in bed like everyone else. But it seems good. I'm kind of following it more this time around because obviously the first time I played it was kind of a bit disjointed. I would be here and there and everywhere. Now I'm kind of trying to make my way through at like the pace that the game intended, and sort of see everything. So I'm kind of a bit more immersed in the story, and so far very good, very very good. Yeah, just very consistent. Like they always have good lore, and what I enjoy about these games is that it doesn't shove the lore in your face, like basically every other RPG does. It's a bit like the difficulty where it's kind of up to you. It's kind of up to the player where how much of it you want. Yeah, not much more to say about the story. The visuals and the next aspect. So the graphics aren't really like anything revolutionary. There's nothing that we haven't seen before. I would call them basically Dark Souls 3 graphics, but a bit better, which is cool. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's that's a good thing as far as I'm concerned. Currently, as it stands, performance issues are pretty much ironed out. So as long as the graphics look good, which they do, and we're not having performance issues, I have nothing to complain about. The actual visuals themselves, like the design of stuff, the architecture, all of this, wow, flawless. This is a damn beautiful game, really, really up there with Bloodborne and Bloodborne, because Bloodborne was gorgeous. Super impressed with. I mean, they always have an amazing team on that, but they really knocked it out of the park this time. It was nuts. It's nuts. Especially, I mean, I'm not going to spoil anything again, but the underground areas are just bonkers beautiful. It's wow, wow. It's something special, honestly, and it's the kind of thing that you have to play for yourself to experience it. I don't particularly think that you can kind of get the full scope from just watching someone else do it. You have to like be in there yourself. Next aspect and the final one is what I consider to be the most important part of any RPG, and that's the immersion. How immersed does this particular game make you? And the thing is, with the with the FromSoft games, they're like the kings of immersion, in my opinion. I think I think a big part of it is something very very specific and kind of nuanced in a way, and I think it's the way that they do their story, and the way that they sort of enable you to travel through the game. So, for example, a lot of other RPGs, I mentioned Red Dead 2 earlier. A problem that they have is because of how they do the story and how they introduce characters. A lot of the time, it's very like travel from point A to point B with X character, and that in itself is kind of a like a jarring interruption almost, right? And then they kind of have to fill that part with exposition to sort of try and keep you immersed. These games never have that. They never have that, which is I mean, it plays super well to their strengths, right? There's never follow this character for the next 3 minutes while they try and fill you in about backstory from this thing that happened before. There's none of that. So your flow isn't ever really interrupted. It's a very seamless experience from like start to finish. It can be a little bit like disjointed here and there. As I said, my first playthrough, I was like here and there and everywhere, trying to find like different things. But I mean, again, that's up to you. If you just want like a seamless from like A to the end of the story, you can just do that. You don't have to go off the beaten path and explore everything. Like you can just have like a very seamless flow all the way through the game. Again, it's just kind of up to you, but a very immersive experience. All in all, it's I would consider it a must play. Yeah, the reviews are not unfounded, even though they're kind of crazy. Um, I would say it's pretty based, honestly. There's just there's just so much to this game. I swear, every single time that I go onto YouTube and I watch a video, it could be a build video, it could be like an opinion video like this. It could be Ostava's playthrough part 4 where he dies to a cliff for like 30 minutes straight. I always see something that I haven't ever seen before, and I'm like, what is that? There's a whole thing there that I've never seen, which is nuts. I told you I'm like 75 hours in at this point, and there's still so many different things that I haven't even seen, that I haven't even experienced yet, and this is just like PVE. It's absolutely nuts. If you're on the fence, hop off and just play the game. It's 100% worth it. If there was any game to like risk spending $60 on, I think it's like $60, it would be this one. You are getting a hell of a lot for your money. One hell of a lot. These are, I mean, the people that made this, they are absolute masters at what they do. Absolute masters. I don't just say that as a fan of their games. Obviously, that's quite a biased opinion. Just as a fan of games in general, they are just unmatched with what they do. It's crazy. Anyway, I hope that helped anyone who's maybe had some indecision.